Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are slipping through the folds of deep time past the early mammals, past the age of dinosaurs, even into a forgotten continent soaked in mist and secrets. You're not walking. You're wading thigh-deep in warm, brackish waters. Every branch you brush away sounds like it might hiss. Somewhere just beyond the fern curtain, a wet croak snaps the silence like thunder. And here's the fun part: you probably won't survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your part of the world. Always fun to see who's still awake with me. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle forward into the spongy undergrowth, your feet sinking into earth that seems to breathe. Thick mists hang like old dreams curling around gnarled trunks and lichen-covered stones. Something wet drips on your shoulder. Don't look up. Just keep moving. This place, long before humans ever put chisel to stone, was ruled by frogs. Not your neighborhood pond kind. These were continent-shaking croakers. Amphibians the size of wolves with tongues like steel cables and eyes that glowed in the dark like polished amber. They didn't live in scattered wetlands either. This was their kingdom. A continent now erased from every modern map. Historians still debate whether it was a southern fragment of Gondwana or an entirely separate plate swallowed by the ocean. They call it Uvadra, though no one agrees on the spelling or even if it ever truly existed. But fossil shards, old cave paintings, and whispered traditions among scattered island tribes all tell the same croaky story at night. The frogs came out. Their reign began before dawn had a voice. Back when flowers were just starting to flirt with color and reptiles still hadn't figured out parenting. The earliest mammals. They were probably snacks. Imagine being a shrew-sized creature trying to tiptoe through this living, slurping bog, knowing full well that a single misplaced step might activate a trapdoor tongue. You pass under a broad-leafed canopy that traps more humidity than a rainforest sauna. Every breath you take tastes like moss and something faintly electrical, like the air before lightning. A long-legged insect flutters past your ear, and somewhere a deep-bellied ribbit replies from beneath the water. You're being watched. Here's your fun fact for the night: frogs don't just hear with their ears. They also feel vibrations through their skin. That's right, the entire surface of their body doubles as an early warning system. And back in Uvadra, this meant the kings of the swamp could detect prey or threats by the tremble of your footsteps. You tiptoe anyway. The floor here is stitched with the roots of tree ferns and bizarre plants with glassy fronds. Something chirps behind you. You pretend not to notice. That chirp is not a bird. It's a warning, maybe even a countdown. According to paleobotanists, this landscape was fed by a constant drizzle of warm rain and a rotating patchwork of fungal forests. Mushrooms the size of umbrellas towered over small mammalian burrows. Bioluminescent spores drifted lazily in the fog like fairy dust if fairies had a love for decay. You crouch beside a pool where the water doesn't ripple, it pulses. Frogs used to gather here in the thousands. Some researchers suggest these were nocturnal conclaves. Others claim they were ritual grounds. And there's an open debate about whether some of the vibrations still faintly detected underground might be remnants of an ancient amphibian communication system, basically frog Wi-Fi. Just as you're about to scoff, a wet splash startles you to your feet. Something big just entered the water across the pool. You hold your breath. Then you hear it low, guttural, and rolling like a snore from a god's throat. One long croak that makes your teeth ache. A moment later, dozens of others join in. It's not a sound. It's a code. And if we're being honest, it's also probably a dinner bell. You duck behind a cluster of prehistoric reeds trying to be smaller than you are. It doesn't work, because here your heartbeat is a beacon. Even your fear has a scent. Odd side note. Some modern frogs can actually smell stress hormones in their prey. Whether this trait existed back in Uvadra is unknown, but your survival odds aren't looking great. You shuffle backward now, trying not to splash. Your foot brushes something squishy, a skull frog. Huge. The eye sockets are wide as hide and forward-facing, suggesting binocular vision. Predators always stare straight. Prey glances sideways. There is movement across the water shadows, bouncing in the fog, accompanied by wet slaps of webbed feet. You count 3, no 5, and then you realize they're not just passing through, they're circling. Time to run. Maybe. But your legs feel like they've been soaked in tree sap. You blink and for a second swear you see one frog standing upright, just a heartbeat longer than any frog should. It hunches slightly, then slides back into the brush without a sound. Was that a trick of the fog? Or a posture encoded by evolution for one purpose? Intimidation. Historians still argue whether these ancient frogs exhibited any group behavior beyond chorus calling, but bones found in linear clusters as well as massive latrine pits, yes, really suggest at least some degree of coordinated territorial behavior. You press on deeper into the soft belly of the continent. The frogs are quieter now, listening maybe, or stalking. A warm wind rolls through the canopy, thick with spores and that strange electric taste. You pause beneath a tree whose trunk is hollowed into a bowl shape, like it's waiting to be filled or drained. Then it starts again. A single croak, long, rising in pitch, and then silence. You don't move, because something tells you that was the last warning. You don't run. You don't blink. You just stand there in a swamp that doesn't know your name. Listening to a frog the size of a dishwasher tests the edges of your courage. The air is so thick you could chew it. And somewhere far off, though, maybe not far enough, you hear the trees flexing, like they've been taught to bend before the real king arrives. Then you hear it, the voice. Not the warble of a tree frog, or the rubbery blurts you might remember from backyard ponds. No, this one hits your ribs like a drumbeat and lodges in the back of your throat. A deep seismic rack that rolls out over the forest floor like thunder from below. You swear the water ripples in time with it. Your ears pop. That's no frog. That's a boss fight in a swamp suit. Paleontologists once dubbed it Beelzebufo Ampinga, the devil frog. But that was a cute nickname compared to what the tribes called it, Verka Dama, or the throat that takes light. Local stories say its voice didn't just carry through the night, it stole it. Wherever Vorka croaked, the stars dimmed, the wind knelt, and even predators shut up. But what's even wilder, it's real. Fossils of Beelzebufo have been found in Madagascar, suggesting that frog giants weren't myth, they were muscle. Nearly 16 inches long, weighing in at 4 kilograms of pure amphibian fury with jaws that could snap a baby dinosaur in two. Literally. Its bite force is estimated to rival that of a wolf. No gums, just unforgiving gristle and grinding plates. You crouch again, hiding near a thick patch of moss-covered rocks. Or what you hope are rocks, because one of them just blinked. Fun fact for your next trivia night: frogs don't just blink to keep their eyes moist. They actually pull their eyes inward to help push food down their throat. Imagine eating a sandwich by rolling your eyeballs back into your skull. That's frog engineering, baby. This one, its eyeballs the size of a plum. And when it blinks again, it tilts its head as if measuring whether your kneecap would make a good snack. You do what any modern mammal would: you whisper nope and start inching backwards. Slowly, quietly, like you're playing Jenga with your life. The croak returns deeper now, almost conversational. Some researchers suggest these frogs used vocal resonance not only for territory but also for identification, like reptilian name tags. Others argue the sound served to stun smaller prey, essentially acting as a sonic weapon. Historians still debate whether early amphibians like this could direct their calls. Aim them like a subwoofer of doom. One recorded fossilized skull showed canal structures that might have worked like acoustic funnels. Picture a frog with built-in speakers. Terrifying, but kind of impressive. You reach the edge of the mud slope and begin descending on all fours, trying not to sound like lunch. That's when you see it, the massive beast itself. It's barely visible in the fog, but there's no mistaking it. A squat, heavy-bodied titan sitting regally in a shallow pool with skin that resembles volcanic stone flecked in moss and algae. Its throat pouch balloons, then deflates with a wet whoomp. You're close enough to see the small ripples as insects flee its radius. One unfortunate beetle doesn't make it. The tongue shoots out and it's just gone. No drama, just suction precision and quiet smugness. Here's where it gets weird. Despite their monstrous size and predatory tools, some believe these frogs were ambush hunters, not chasers. They didn't sprint after prey. They sat in the shadows so still they'd gather moss. And when anything got close enough, snap. Gone. You slip on the edge of the slope, just a tiny skid, but it's enough. The frog turns its head, slowly, deliberately. That same wet blink. Then a bubble in its throat, small this time like a warning cough. You freeze, not that you had a better plan. Another odd detail: frogs don't have ribs or diaphragms. Their entire breathing mechanism relies on a weird gulping motion through the throat, which means when you hear one inflate like that, it's not breathing. It's charging. The devil frog inches forward. You don't see it hop, just this slow shuddering squat-hop-squat rhythm that keeps its belly an inch above the moss. And here's your off-topic weirdness of the night: some modern frogs can hibernate in ice, slowing their heartbeat to nearly nothing. Back in Uvadra, it's likely some of these kings could bury themselves during dry spells, waiting years to return. You backpedal until you hit a dead tree. Well, mostly dead. It's got a fungal shelf on it shaped exactly like an open hand. You briefly consider apologizing to it. The frog halts. It stares at you. And then, as if bored, it croaks again, but this time the sound is different. Not aggressive, not territorial, almost curious. Which raises an unsettling question. Was it tracking you as prey or as company? Some academics, usually the ones laughed out of journals, have proposed that these frogs had complex behaviors, that they may have even used low-frequency sounds to manipulate flocking behavior in other species. Basically, Jedi mind tricks, but with croaks. You take the moment of hesitation and bolt, tripping, half falling, sliding down a root-choked hill until you splash into another warm pool. The water is shallower here, ringed by strange reed-like plants that glow faintly at the tips. Fire frog moss, they call it. Bioluminescent and slightly hallucinogenic if ingested. As you scramble out of the pool, soaked and panting, the croak fades behind you. You're not sure if that means you've escaped or if you've just been given a head start. But one thing's certain: you've heard the voice of the swamp's original ruler, and it knows what you taste like. You limp forward now, one shoe lost to the bog and the other making that special squelching sound that only happens when your foot is half mud, half regret. The air smells like the inside of a warm aquarium, and something faintly metallic like copper coins left in rainwater. All around you, the swamp pulses. Not metaphorically, literally. The ground under your toes rises and falls like the slow inhale of a massive sleeper. Welcome to the breathing plain. This is where the land isn't entirely land. It's layers of decaying plant matter stitched together by root systems that hold it just barely above the waterline. Step wrong, and you're in up to your chest. Step right, and it still feels like walking across a giant soggy trampoline made of wet leaves and ancestral guilt. And from this pulpy stage, the frogs emerge. You first notice their eyes, gleaming in the mist, golden and unmoving, like someone scattered coins across the forest and forgot to pick them up. Then the heads, some flat as shields, others strangely angular, like they were designed by a reptilian architect with opinions. Each one rises silently, barely disturbing the leaf layer. A low tremble begins in your bones. It's not fear this time, it's resonance. Because here on the breathing ground, the frogs don't walk, they feel. This land amplifies vibration. A single step can send messages across a mile of moss. A heartbeat can echo like a drumbeat. And you're broadcasting like a radio. Scientists believe this entire swamp plain was a sort of living antenna. Giant frogs use the organic network beneath their feet to communicate, perhaps to coordinate, maybe even to sing in complex overlapping calls that told stories or announced threats. Historians still debate whether this was a deliberate form of proto-language or just an elaborate coincidence. Either way, it worked. You tiptoe across a mat of reeds and feel the subtle give beneath your weight. With each step, tiny bubbles rise up through the surface, air pockets from decomposing plant life or something breathing below. You can't be sure. A burst of croaks erupts behind you, perfectly synchronized. Not random, not chaotic. It sounds like roll call. A dozen frogs checking in. One short call each. No repeats. You don't respond. Probably for the best. Fun fact, some species of frogs use their vocal sacs as amplifiers to project their calls over vast distances. In prehistoric Uvadra, the dominant breeds had double throat sacs, one on each side of the jaw. These were not frogs trying to attract mates. These were frogs trying to control real estate. You crouch behind what you think is a fern until it hisses at you and scuttles away. Turns out it was just a camouflaged arthropod. You make a note not to trust anything green from now on. The ground shifts again beneath your knees. A low rises from the soil. It's not sound. Its vibration fell through your chest more than your ears. Something huge is moving beneath the swamp skin, and then all at once the frogs appear, dozens of them, rising in synchronized silence. Their eyes catch the moonlight, and for a brief moment it looks like the entire swamp is staring at you. Some are small, barely the size of dinner plates. Others are boulder-sized with moss hanging from their flanks and toothy mouths half covered by algae veils. You don't scream. Got it, you. Instead, you inch backward until you reach a raised cluster of rotting logs. You climb onto it, hoping it's more solid than it smells. It creaks but holds. From this perch, you get your first proper look at the ritual. Yes, ritual. Because there's no other word for what follows. One by one, the frogs begin to pulse. Throat sacs inflate, then deflate. A rhythm forms, not musical exactly, but patterned. Left side, right side, center, then again, then again. It builds. A biologist might describe it as a mating display. A folklorist might call it a summoning. You're too fascinated to care. The frogs are communicating, not in sentences, but in pulses. A shared beat, a living language, and you're the only outsider watching. Off-topic trivia, while you try not to pass out, a species of frog discovered in India was found to hum at a frequency that helps them navigate during monsoon floods. Not just communicate, navigate. Imagine driving by, humming. That's how weird amphibians can get. Back in Uvadra, this humming has scaled into symphony. The moss undulates with the beat. Trees drip in rhythm. Even the fire frog moss at the edges of the clearing glows brighter on the downbeat. It's not just sound, it's ecology performing itself. Then suddenly it stops. Silence thick as fog. The frogs lower their throats. All of them, in unison. One large male, easily the size of a smart car, lifts its chin. A final deep-bellied croak breaks the stillness. It's not threatening, it's declarative. You've been seen. You've been logged in the frog ledger. Historians still debate whether this kind of group display had a leadership hierarchy. Was there a frog king? A matriarch? Or were they just vibing? The fossil record offers little clarity. No royal frog crowns have been found. Yet, you exhale. You weren't eaten. That's progress. But just as you prepare to retreat, the ground beneath your feet shifts again, only this time it's not a ripple. It's a rise. The mound of logs you thought you'd climbed onto not logs. A back, a living back, covered in years of decay and bark. It shifts again. The creature groans low and wet. You scramble off just in time as the massive creature unfolds itself from the soil. 30 feet long, eyes set wide apart, a body like a crocodile dragged through a garden center, and on its shoulder a frog, sitting calmly, like a passenger. So, some frogs rode other animals. You file that under things to emotionally process later. For now, you do what you always do in these moments: you run. And this time the swamp breathes faster behind you. You don't look back. Because looking back feels like a mistake in a place where the trees have eyes and the mud might be thinking. Instead, you vault over a tangle of roots, one of which moans softly under your weight, and land with a splash in thigh-deep water. It's warm, too warm, like a bath someone forgot to drain after something amphibian used it. You press forward, your footsteps swallowed by reeds that seem to part and close like a throat. Something chirps overhead. A bird, number 2 rhythmic, 2 hollow. You freeze. Then you hear it again: chirp, chirp, chirp. Thud. You wait. Nothing. Then splash. From behind. Something just fell, or leapt. And then, silence. That's how they do it here. The frogs. They don't chase you with snarls, they don't crack branches, they wait, they glide, they ambush. Because when night falls here, the moon doesn't light the swamp. The frogs do. Their eyes, dozens at a time, float in the black, uncanny mirrors that track your movements like predators running tech support. But it's their coordination that's worse. These aren't loner frogs. No, these are packs. Imagine a half-dozen glossy-bodied amphibians creeping through fern-thick shadows. Each croak, each wet plop of their limbs timed. Some historians believe they hunted collectively. Not like wolves, more like shadows that closed in from all angles, each frog communicating position through low-frequency throat clicks. Still debated, of course. But scratch marks on prey fossils often show damage from multiple mouths, not just one. That, and the fact that small feathered dinosaurs were sometimes found without their legs, suggesting they were pulled down immobilized. Efficient. Brutal. And here's the worst part: they did it silently. You move faster now, careful not to make sudden splashes, but that's when you realize something. The frogs aren't just near you, they're hurting you. Off-topic oddity to distract your panic. There's a species of modern frog that uses its tongue to lasso prey. Not just shoot lasso, a full arc like a tiny sticky cowboy. It's called Ceratophorus, and it's the closest thing we have today to these prehistoric brutes. Back in Uvadra, their cousins weren't catching insects. They were catching anything that wandered too far from its pack, or was alone. Like you. The reeds part ahead of you, and yep, it's a trap. A clearing. Silent, too silent. No croaks, no chirps, no hums. You step into it anyway, because what else can you do? The space is flat, ferns hang limp in the heavy night air. A shallow stream curls through the center like a vein. You pause. The ground feels solid finally. That's when the frogs strike. One drops from a low-hanging branch, not jumps, drops like a sack of meat filled with bad intentions. Another slides from behind a stump and plops into position. A third creeps from beneath a curled frond and opens its mouth just wide enough to reveal the pink glow of its tongue. And they wait, because you're not the target. From the brush across the clearing, a small mammal scurries out. Some kind of early marsupial, maybe related to modern opossums. Big eyes, bushy tail. It pauses at the stream to drink. One of the frogs croaks. The mammal freezes. Another croak lower, then another farther behind it. A fourth frog emerges from the underbrush. The mammal bolts to the left, straight into the jaws of the fifth frog waiting by the bank. Snap. No scream, just a rustle, and gone. That's the hunting strategy. Total darkness. Distributed positioning. Acoustic coordination. Zero mercy. You don't breathe. The frogs go still again, except for one. It turns its head toward you. Fun fact, some prehistoric frogs had directional hearing. They could triangulate the exact location of a noise source using nothing but eardrum pressure. Their skulls were natural sonar dishes. You made a noise. You're a dot on the map. You step back into the reeds, but something soft brushes your leg. You jump. It's not a frog. It's another mammal. A baby this time. Wide-eyed, frozen. It stares at you like you're the safest thing in the world, which is probably the cruelest joke the swamp has told all night. Then the frogs shift again. You make a decision you'll regret later and scoop the baby mammal into your arms. It's surprisingly light and smells like wet moss in desperation. You run. Behind you, the frogs croak, not angry but annoyed. You've interrupted the hunt. Here's your historical tidbit while you panic jog. Recent fossil digs in submerged floodplains suggest that certain areas in Uvadra were annual hunting grounds. Remains found in clusters, prey bones sorted by species. Even some tools that weren't quite tools. Shaped sticks may be used to herd smaller animals. Some argue that frogs didn't just ambush, they shaped the hunt. You're not sure if what you saw proves that. But as you dodge a low branch and leap over a mud crater full of glowing moss, you're suddenly very aware that these creatures weren't simple. They were sophisticated, strategic, silent. And their domain wasn't a swamp, it was a battlefield. You stop only when you reach a wall of stone, a cliff face crusted with ferns and dotted with cave mouths. Behind you, silence again. The kind that hums with the threat of sound. You tuck the trembling animal into a pocket of your cloak. It curls tight, eyes shut, and you wonder how many others before you tried to save something and whether they made it to higher ground. One of the caves yawns wider than the rest. You step into it. The air inside is cooler, stiller. Dry enough to make your skin flinch. For now, the frogs stay outside. But the night, it still belongs to them. Inside the cave, it's dark enough that even your thoughts go quiet. Not pitch black. No, this isn't one of those caves. The walls shimmer faintly with mineral streaks and soft lichens giving off the faintest green-blue glow, like someone dipped the place in moonlight and forgot to rinse it. Your breath echoes back to you slower than you'd expect. The stone is old, patient, unbothered by your presence. You move deeper. The tiny mammal still clutched to your chest, its eyes shut in that universal language of, "Please don't make me go back out there." You don't blame it. Then you hear it. Not the frogs, not croaks. Drips. Regular, deliberate, almost like counting. And then a sound you weren't prepared for, echoed frog calls. But not natural, not present, historic. You turn toward the wall. The chamber you've wandered into has a curve to it, and the ceiling rises like the inside of a massive bell. The acoustics here, incredible. A single sharp click of your foot against a stone, and suddenly, whoom! The call reverberates, circling the chamber like a phantom. Historians still debate whether these caves were used by the frogs themselves or by something else that lived alongside them. But what is agreed upon is that these were not just random hollows, they're designed. The floor flattens. The wall formations become suspiciously symmetrical. Small alcoves repeat at regular intervals. You're not in a cave. You're in a hall. The city of hollows, some paleogeographers call it. The theory. These limestone caverns weren't just erosion-born. They were excavated, shaped, made for sound, not for light, which makes sense. Frogs didn't rely on sight here. They relied on resonance. You run your hand along the wall. The surface is smooth, grooved in sections like the inside of a flute. Could this entire chamber have once sung? Here's a weird but true side note. The Rana tormota, a frog native to China, can produce ultrasonic calls. Yes, beyond human hearing. Some scientists believe their ancestors may have been using that frequency long before anything with fur showed up. Imagine a continent where half the conversation happened in a pitch you could never perceive. In this cave, you feel like you've stepped into that silence. The kind that's full of meaning, but you don't speak the language. You set the little creature down gently beside a rock basin filled with condensation. It drinks tiny tongue flicking at the drops. Then it curls up and sleeps. A wise choice. You explore. There are markings here, not letters, not glyphs. Grooves. Patterns. Some repeat like echoes carved in stone. A few ripple outward from central pits. Some researchers believe these were resonance maps, ways of tuning a chamber to amplify specific sounds. That frog call from outside, you bet it would carry forever in here. Others argue the frogs didn't use this at all, that these caves were carved by an ancient unknown creature that lived symbiotically with the frogs, maybe even herded them. Wild theory. Sure, but it might explain the wear patterns on the stone, as if something large but soft-footed moved through here regularly. You wander deeper still. Then you hear something impossible, a croak. Not near, below. You freeze. There's a hole near the rear of the chamber. Not a tunnel, a shaft. It descends into darkness, and from inside that same call echoes up, warped slightly by the stone. And you swear this one isn't just a call, it's a chant. You lean in, then movement. A gust of warm air from below. Not air, breath. You step back. Remember that idea about communal nesting? Some paleontologists support the theory that massive frog species return to these caverns year after year to spawn. Fossil records show repeated clusters of tadpole remains in the same sedimentary strata. That means for potentially thousands of years, these caves were amphibian nurseries. And maybe one of them still is. You sit beside the shaft. Listen. That sounds so regular, so patient it doesn't stop. Every few seconds a croak, not distressed, not hungry, just present. Odd fact for the night. Some modern frogs like the Tungara frog can produce calls that generate visible air ripples in water. If that tech existed here in some monstrous ancestral form, this cave might have once hummed from all directions. No need for eyes, no need for warmth. Just vibration, just knowing. The mammal stirs in its sleep beside you. Its tiny claws twitch as if dreaming of trees. You lean back, letting the stones support your spine. There are no drawings here, no totems, no bones that you can see. Just shape, just function. It's a city not of rulers and thrones, but of sound. And you realize something odd and comforting. The frogs weren't just predators. They were engineers, composers, architects of echo and stillness. Maybe they weren't ruling out of hunger. Maybe they were just trying to be heard. You sleep, of course. Eventually, the silence of the cave cradles you like wet velvet, and your eyelids surrender. The little mammal presses itself against your side, small chest rising in quick, soft pulses. The last thing you hear before you drift off is the low hum from the shaft, a sound like a lullaby played underwater. And when you wake, the world has changed. Not outside, not the cave walls, the air. It's heavier, wetter, more electric. The kind of atmosphere that makes your skin feel like a sponge and your thoughts feel 3 steps behind your body. You step outside the cave and into a stormless rainfall. There's no thunder, no wind, just that kind of endless vertical drizzle that makes everything taste like river water, every leaf, every stone, every frog wet and shimmering. This is the season, the one they all waited for, the one the frogs built their year-round. Rain doesn't just fall here, it summons. In modern rainforests, some frogs time their entire mating cycles to seasonal shifts in barometric pressure. They can feel a storm coming before it's visible. The pressure dips and, like flipping a switch, they start singing. It's less romance, more calendar. In Uvadra, things were far stranger. You step through a flooded forest floor as frogs emerge from everywhere. Not hopping, not even crawling, just appearing. Sliding from under bark, dropping from hollow trunks, rising from puddles that weren't there yesterday. Their eyes shine like coins. Their skins glisten in patterns of ochre and green. And the calls begin. 1, then 3, then a dozen, each tone layered like music forming chords too wet and too slow to exist in any human song. You swear one of them croaks in a low C sharp. Another responds in fifths. They're harmonizing, they're organizing, and they're moving, not randomly southward. Across this landscape, thousands of frogs are migrating. It's not chaotic, it's methodical, rhythmic, and it follows no visible cue. Historians still debate whether these movements were guided by weather alone or if there was something deeper at work, magnetoreception perhaps or tidal memory. What's certain is that these weren't simple puddle jumps. They were journeys. You joined the flow walking parallel to them. At your feet, frogs ranging from kitten-sized to full backpack-sized crawl with quiet determination. A few glance up at you, no aggression, just acknowledgement. Your background noise now. A mammal caught in the tide. Fun fact to pad your mental panic. Certain present-day frogs in South America can sense minute vibrations from thunderstorms over 100 miles away. They burrow deeper or begin their calls based on the feeling of weather systems long before they arrive. Back in Uvadra, this sensitivity reached absurd levels. The frogs move in sync not just with pressure and heat, but with the moon. You pass under a break in the canopy where the clouds part briefly, and there it is, a full moon so pale it almost looks silver. You swear the croaking intensifies when it touches the water. The path leads into a clearing, massive flooded flat like a natural plaza. In its center, a shallow lake reflects the gray sky. Around its rim, the frogs gather. Not jostling, not fighting, just waiting. And then one moves forward. It's the biggest you've seen. Wide, as a dining table patterned in emerald spirals. Its throat expands like a balloon, and from it comes a call so low your vision stutters. You feel it in your sternum. One by one, the others join. The sound isn't loud, it's dense, like fog made of sound. It fills your head, your lungs, the space behind your eyes. This isn't a mating call, it's a ritual. The great seasonal convergence of frogs. Triggered by rain, aligned to moon. Tuned by instinct and inherited vibration. And here's the twist, it may not be for them. Some paleontologists speculate that this mass gathering wasn't reproductive at all, but defensive. That the frogs, aware of seasonal predators, flying reptiles, larger amphibians, or even early theropods gathered in unified frequency to ward off attacks. A sonic shield. Others say it was ancestral, a reenactment of some long-lost origin event passed down not in memory but in rhythm. Still others, and this is where things get truly speculative, believe the frogs were tuning the land, that their calls at scale could change the vibration of the very ecosystem, altering fungal growth, attracting prey species, or triggering rain retention in the soil. Sound as terraforming, croak as climate control, you stand in the drizzle watching them sing. Your heart tries to match their rhythm. It can't. You're not built for this world, you never were. The little mammal peeks out from your side pouch and squeaks quietly. Even it knows to stay silent here. You back away slowly. Not because you're afraid, but because this feels private, like walking into a cathedral mid-prayer. As you leave the clearing, the sound follows you, not loud but ever present. And you realize the frogs don't rule by strength. They rule by timing. They emerge with the weather, sing in alignment with the moon, move with the pressure, breathe with the land. They don't fight the world. They read it. And tonight, you got to see it happen. You walk until your legs wobble. Not from exhaustion, though sure that too, but from something stranger, awe. Because even now, deep into this dripping continent where frogs run the night shift, you haven't seen the strangest thing. Until now, the rain slackens and the moon slips behind clouds. Silence doesn't fall, it rises. That frog hum that had filled the air like underwater choir practice just lifts. The forest holds its breath, and then you see it. A single ripple in a shallow pool just ahead. At first you think it's just another rain splash, maybe a drip from a leaf. But the ripples don't stop. They spread outward in perfect concentric circles. Then the water bulges just slightly and something surfaces. No hopping, no splashing, just a soft bloop like a seal exhaling. And from the pool rises it. A frog, a leviathan, 20 feet long from snout to haunch, not counting the legs. Skin like cracked basalt ridged with lime growth. A throat sac big enough to sit in pulsing gently with every breath. And eyes, oh, those eyes. The size of coconuts, milky with age, flecked with gold, blinking in wet slow motion. You step back instinctively, but it doesn't move. Doesn't need to. This is Garganto rana, the one they all talk about. The legend painted on cave ceilings you didn't even know you passed. The creature so large it didn't hunt you came to it. Historians still debate whether Garganto rana was a unique species or just a particularly long-lived, oversized variation of Beelzebufo. Whatever the case, its remains have never been officially catalogued, but claw scratches in sediment impressions in ancient lake beds and one fossilized femur roughly the length of your femur and torso combined suggest something existed. You crouch behind a boulder the size of a minivan, peeking as the beast does. Absolutely nothing. Just sits there, breathing, croaking once so low it sounds like a distant landslide. Birds scatter from the trees. Then from the underbrush movement. A flock of feathered bipeds. Small, curious, jittery. Avian theropods, maybe? Ancestors of pigeons or perhaps some cousin branch that never made it out of the continent. They chirp, peck at the moss, circle the pool. You whisper, don't. But of course, one of them hops closer to the water's edge. Another joins, then a third. The Garganto doesn't blink. A moment passes, then snap. Not even fast, just final. One blink, one movement, and the nearest bird is gone. No thrash, no feathers, just a soft bulge in the throat sac. You gag a little, respectfully. Odd fact to pair with that trauma. There's a frog species in Africa, Trichobatrachus robustus, that breaks its own bones to form claws when threatened. Yes, Wolverine style. Bone daggers push through the toe pads. Just imagine what Garganto rana could have done. But here's the thing, this one doesn't seem aggressive. Another bird inches close. The frog doesn't react, then another. Still nothing. You watch in disbelief as 5, 6, 7 tiny birds gather at the pond's edge, drinking, chirping, hopping over its webbed toes, like the event you just witnessed didn't happen. Or didn't matter. Historians have proposed that Garganto rana might have been opportunistic. Not a killer, just a gulper. A being so big it didn't need to hunt. Just wait for the foolish. Which leads to a theory that some creatures learned to live around it. Like mice in the pantry of a sleeping cat. A shape passes overhead, some flying reptile, a pterosaur may be banking low to scan the forest. The birds duck. The frog does not. Because what's going to mess with that? You creep around the clearing, giving the pond a respectful berth. You count your steps. Breathe through your mouth. Don't make eye contact. Don't even think about eye contact. Another oddity. Its pupils are horizontal slits like goats. An evolutionary trait that improves peripheral vision and depth perception on the horizontal plane. Perfect for detecting prey sneaking from either side. You stop moving. The frog's head turns just slightly. You freeze. It stares at you, then croaks softly. You feel it in your toes, but it doesn't leap, doesn't chase, just watches. Like a teacher waiting to see what answer you'll give. Then as if bored, it turns away and sinks slowly majestically back beneath the water. The ripples fade. The birds return. You stand there a long time unsure what just happened. Did you survive something or witness something sacred? One thing's clear, Garganto rana wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mutation. It was designed. By evolution, by chance, by some bizarre ecosystem arms race. Historians still don't know, but its mouth big enough to swallow your sense of wonder whole. And now the forest exhales again. Rain picks back up. The frogs resume their choir. And you, now marked by something ancient, continue walking. You're starting to suspect this continent remembers everything. You move differently now. Not faster, not slower, just smaller. as though the forest deserves a little more respect after what you've seen. The frogs croak again in the distance, and it no longer sounds random. It sounds strategic. Because tonight it's not just about song. It's about war. The first sign is a shiver in the trees, not wind, something deeper, like the roots just flinched. Then silence. Not everywhere, just in one direction. An abrupt stop like a needle pulled from the groove of a record. You glance that way. Nothing moves. You feel it in your chest before you hear it a pulse. Then another, like distant drums underwater. You inch forward, pressing through heavy ferns until you reach a rise. The view below looks like any other part of the swamp until you realize there are no birds, no bugs, no chirps, and then you see it. Two frog clusters, opposite sides of a shallow marsh. Dozens of massive amphibians crouched low, throats inflated, bodies slick with rain. Silent, waiting. And in the middle, neutral ground. The tremors begin again. You watch as one of the frogs, easily the size of a lawn chair, takes a single hop forward. Another on the opposite side matches it. Then both pause, inflate, release a synchronized brrr, arp that rattles a cloud of nearby moths out of a dead tree. It's not just a meeting, it's a clash. Historians still debate whether prehistoric frogs defended territory in large, coordinated groups. Some argue that seasonal migration routes caused friction between rival colonies, especially during breeding cycles. Others believe these battles were more like sonic competitions, vocal showdowns, where the loudest, deepest, or weirdest call claimed the marsh. Tonight, you're watching the latter, maybe, because suddenly both sides unleash a wave of croaks, deep, rolling, rhythmic. It's like listening to two alien nightclubs competing for swamp supremacy. You can't look away. The frog on the left side takes another hop forward, a challenger. His skin pulses with orange undertones glowing briefly beneath the rain. From the other side, a larger frog responds, not with a leap, but with a vibration. His throat doesn't inflate. It quivers. Fast, sharp, like a subsonic alarm bell. The air shifts, and then, with no warning, the fight begins. It's not what you expect. No leaping violence. No high-speed takedowns. Just one frog ramming the other with a low rolling thud of body against body. The sound echoes like hitting a soaked log with a club. The smaller frog rebounds, croaks once sharply, and hops backward. Submission. Maybe. The other frogs on both sides begin croaking now. Not just random noise patterned, like a stadium chant. Your brain can't process it all at once, but your instincts can. Because what you're watching is less about domination and more about demonstration. They're sending messages. Here's a fun, horrifying biological note. Modern Lithobates cates baianis, the American bullfrog, uses calls to mark territory. Not just once, repeatedly, until the sound alone becomes an invisible fence. Other frogs learn the boundaries not by sight but by decibels. Here in this forgotten continent, that strategy has scaled up. The marsh becomes a chessboard of noise. Each croak placement matters. Each vibration tests another frog's confidence. At one point, two massive males begin circling, not lunging, just humming at each other in low rolling warbles like a prehistoric foghorns trading insults. You catch movement on the edge, smaller frogs barely dinner plate sized, hopping in loose patterns. Scouts support. It's impossible to tell, but they're not random. Suddenly from the treetops a crack. A branch gives way. You flinch. Every frog turns toward the sound. Then silence again. This is what makes them terrifying. Not their size, not their jaws, their restraint. They don't panic. They assess. You remain crouched behind a fallen tree, barely daring to breathe. Your mammalian brain screams, they're just frogs, but every part of your body knows better. This is a ritual of sound dominance memory. It's battle theater, and you're watching from the cheap seats. You watch as the frogs begin to back away from the marsh. Not retreat, more like reset. Each side disperses in reverse order one by one until the clearing is empty. No blood, No broken limbs, just ripples and echoes. Some experts call this territorial convergence. Others suggest the frogs were testing for resonance compatibility, deciding which individuals could breed without competing frequencies. Still debated. All you know is that you just witnessed one of the quietest wars in history, and somehow it shook more than any roar. The trees exhale again. A distant thunder growls across the horizon, real weather this time. Maybe. You emerge from your hiding spot, legs numb, soaked to the bone. But you're smiling. Because frogs didn't rule by force. They ruled by rhythm. And tonight you felt the beat of an ancient, wet war. The storm breaks gently. No lightning, no howling winds. Just a dense, warm curtain of rain that settles across the land like a heavy blanket. You turn your face toward it, blinking away droplets. Somewhere behind you, frogs begin their chorus again, softer this time. Not a chant, not a challenge. More like a lullaby shared across a kingdom of puddles. You descend a slope slick with moss and curiosity until your foot sinks into a warm pool. Not deep, just enough to chill your ankles and remind you kindly that nothing here stays dry for long. And as you pull your foot free, you realize something. The water's alive. No, not crawling with predators or shimmering with bacteria. It's alive with movement. With tadpoles, millions of them. They swirl like ink in a painter's jar, darting in and out of lily shadows, bumping against your feet like curious shadows. You freeze. This is a nursery. An entire marsh devoted to birth, life, and more importantly, protection. Historians still debate whether these nurseries were communal. Some fossil evidence suggests that multiple frog species use the same breeding pools, often with overlapping developmental cycles. Others argue that it was a free-for-all, with only the strongest offspring surviving. But you're looking at something different. There's order here. The tadpoles are layered in size, bigger ones toward the middle, smaller ones near the warm edges. You realize that the pool has an infrastructure. Natural but intentional. Stones arranged in a pattern that divides flow, creating quiet eddies. Shallow nooks for sun warming. Deeper corners for retreat. And floating near the center, the guardians. You count 7. Massive adult frogs, stationary, silent, partially submerged. Their backs look like moss-covered logs. Their eyes are open but unfocused, like they're dreaming with one eye on the door. They don't croak, they listen. You lower yourself to your knees slowly, and the tadpoles don't scatter. They weave around your fingers, brushing your skin with tiny flicks of their tails. They're not afraid of you, which is deeply unsettling. Because they should be. You glance at the guardians again. No movement. But one of them lifts its throat sac just slightly when you reach toward a particularly bold tadpole. Not a threat, not even a warning. More like we're watching. Odd fact to distract your nerves, some species of modern frogs guard their eggs. One even keeps tadpoles in its vocal sac until they're ready to hop. It's a very moist, very weird babysitting service. But nothing compares to this. These guardians aren't parents in the mammalian sense. No nesting, no cuddles, just presence. Their role is not to nurture, it's to deter. You scan the edges of the pool. That's when you see it, a branch moving against the wind. A low shadow slithering. A snake. It glides silently toward the watermouth, already opening in anticipation. A snack maybe, 1 or 2 tadpoles. Nothing dramatic. And then croak. Not loud, just pointed. One guardian inflates its throat and releases a deep, humming call. The snake pauses. Another frog croaks from the opposite side. Then another and another. It's not a warning, it's a code. A positioning system. Triangulation in sound. The snake freezes. It begins to retreat. Slowly, without a single hiss. This, more than anything else, tells you who rules this continent. Not with teeth, not with speed, with presence. The rain thickens. You crouch under a leafy overhang and watch as more adult frogs arrive, each one silent, settling at regular intervals around the pool like monks taking up prayer positions. And then, without ceremony, one begins to sing. Not a call, a note, long, rising, rich, like a cello string dipped in water and stretched through fog. Then another joins, and another. You close your eyes. It's music. Actual music. Some biologists believe frogs sing not just for territory or mating but for atmosphere. That different calls modulate humidity, temperature, even insect behavior. A living climate control system. You don't know if that's true. But as the nursery swells with layered croaks, the rain softens. The wind dies down. The tadpoles settle. And for a moment, just one, you feel safe. You exhale. So do the frogs. There's a final oddity that scientists puzzle over to this day: fossilized remains of frogs with abnormally large middle ear structures, suggesting they could detect not just airborne vibrations but subterranean ones. It's possible these guardians aren't just watching above. They're listening below. You stay until the sky dims again and the mist turns silver. The mammal in your pouch stirs, yawns, and climbs onto your shoulder like it owns the place. You don't mind, because for now at least you're part of this ecosystem. A visitor, a witness, and the frogs have allowed it. You leave the nursery slowly, as if waking from a dream you're not ready to end. Every splash of your step feels like an intrusion. Every breath feels borrowed. Behind you, the tadpole pool glimmers under a canopy of mist, its guardians silent once more. But ahead, something else waits. The land opens not into a clearing, but into a shallow canyon, hemmed in by moss-choked ridges. The air changes again, not drier, but thicker, like something has settled over this place and forgotten to leave. And in that air floats a sound you can't place. High, lyrical, beautiful. You pause. It's not a bird, not wind, not insect. It's a song. Not random, not tuneless. It has rhythm. It rises, then falls, then rises again. Like an invitation you're not sure you're supposed to hear. You move forward, careful now. The mammal on your shoulder clings tightly, its claws digging gently into your collarbone. It hears it too. Then you see them. A row of frogs, smaller, sleeker, perched on tree roots like performers on a stage. Each one croaks in sequence, mouths opening wide to let out tones that against all reason harmonize. It isn't croaking as warning or mating. This is music. You duck behind a vine curtain and observe. A bird-like lizard creeps into view, maybe a primitive coelurosaur covered in shaggy proto-feathers, its eyes flicking between the frogs. It cocks its head, drawn in. One frog changes its tone, slightly sharper, a trill at the end. The lizard steps forward. Another frog joins. The tone changes again. Warmer now, softer, as if soothing. The lizard relaxes. Then snap. A frog from beneath the leaf litter launches upward. Its tongue, longer than your forearm, lashes out and reels the lizard in like a wet tape measure. The song stops. The silence that follows is so absolute you don't realize you're holding your breath until your chest starts to ache. Then the singers resume. Same rhythm, same tones. They're not mourning the kill. They're resetting, because this wasn't music. It was bait. Historians still debate whether these song tactics were instinctive or learned. Could frogs of this continent have evolved not only calls to attract mates but to manipulate predators, to lure in rivals and catch them unaware? It's a controversial idea. But what you're watching, it doesn't feel accidental. Some scientists point to the Eleutherodactylus coqui in modern-day Puerto Rico. Males produce dual-tone calls co-qui, each part targeting a different biological need. One to attract females, the other to repel other males. A built-in two-channel broadcast. But these prehistoric crooners, they've turned that duality into performance art. You creep closer. The frogs don't flinch. And for a split second, you see the edges of something even weirder: coordination. These frogs aren't just singing together. They're adjusting to each other, waiting for gaps in rhythm, layering their tones, creating waves that pull and push. It's a concert, a trap, a warning, and maybe a memory. Because you start to wonder, are they calling something specific or someone? The ground beneath your feet pulses with each note. You realize that the rock you're crouched on is hollow underneath, a chamber or a resonance cavity. This whole canyon might be a speaker. Some paleogeologists have theorized about amphibian amphitheaters, natural formations where frog calls were amplified across great distances, possibly to signal changes in migration, possibly to claim territory, possibly to summon. Your chest vibrates with each rising tone. Your vision goes soft at the edges. You're not scared. You're entranced. The frogs stop again, abruptly. And from the opposite side of the canyon, in perfect response, comes another chorus. Different frogs, similar rhythm, answering. This is no random call and response. It's a conversation. You stagger backward and sit down hard in the mud. The mammal chirps at you disapprovingly. You shush it gently, eyes wide. Because here, the frogs aren't just croaking to lure prey. They're communicating across distance. You suddenly feel very, very small. One final off-topic fact to marinate in some frogs today have been recorded choosing their pitch based on local acoustics. That's right, they adjust mid-song to avoid overlap like tuning forks with feelings. Which means what you're hearing might not just be instinct. It might be culture. The singers resume softer now, more relaxed. Perhaps the hunt is over. Perhaps they've said what needed saying. You leave them behind slowly, carefully, because tonight you've learned that the frogs of this forgotten continent didn't just sing to mate or kill. They sang to remember. The deeper you go, the quieter the frogs become. But it's not absence, it's restraint. Even the air feels like it's listening. A heavy, velvety silence that coats your ears and dulls your footsteps. You move through it slowly, careful not to disrupt whatever strange spell has fallen across the landscape. Then you see the sky. No, really see it, because for the first time in hours the canopy opens, and through that tear in the trees the stars hang low and bright as if someone pinned them up there just for you. Only they're moving. No, they're leaving. Shapes rise in waves first. A few, then dozens, then hundreds. Large-bodied silhouettes against the moonlight, flapping steadily upward like slow, purposeful fireworks. At first you think birds, then pterosaurs. But you've seen those shapes before. Those are frogs. Flying frogs. Not literally airborne like eagles. More like gliders, creatures with webbing between their limbs that catch the humid wind just right. And when they leap from high cliffs or massive fungal towers, they ride the air like winged parachutes. Historians still debate whether these were a separate evolutionary branch or simply the adult form of a common marsh-dwelling species. Either way, their mass ascent has only one explanation: migration. And it's not horizontal. It's vertical. The mammals on your shoulder chitters nervously. Understandable. You're witnessing an event almost no one alive today has imagined, let alone documented. Hundreds, possibly thousands of gliding frogs spiraling skyward one after the other, creating temporary blotches across the moon. Their bellies gleam pale green in the moonlight. Some croak mid-air, the sound trailing behind them like vapor. But where are they going? You follow the slope of the land as it rises. The forest gives way to limestone ridges and eroded columns like the vertebrae of some long-dead titan. Vines coil across the stone, catching droplets of fog and glowing faintly blue. You keep climbing. At one point, the trail narrows to a ledge just wide enough for 1 foot at a time. Below, darkness. Above, sound. Because they're still croaking, those airborne frogs, but the tone is changing. Higher pitched, sharper. A call not of seduction or hunger, but signal. And then the world opens. You step onto a plateau ringed with giant mushrooms, some nearly 20 feet high, their caps swaying gently with the moist updraft. Frogs cling to the undersides like living lanterns. Some leap off, glide out into the night, vanish. Others land. You count nearly 50 already gathered. Perched, waiting, all facing inward toward the center of the plateau, where there's nothing, just stone, cracked, faintly humming. Odd trivia breaks some frogs today, like the Wallace's flying frog can glide over 50 feet using nothing but stretched webbing. But no known species uses flight for ritual. Here, that's exactly what you're watching. A new wave of frogs descends, landing with wet slaps and contented chirps. One of the mushrooms flashes with bioluminescence, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then, silence. Total, all-consuming, held-breath silence. One frog steps forward, massive. Older than old. Its back is etched with scars. One eye is clouded. It turns slowly, facing each cardinal direction in turn. Then croaks. Once, low and long. A pause. Then 4 frogs echo. Then 16. And then nothing. You wait. Then you hear it. From above. A reply. Somewhere far up the cliffs, deeper into the sky, a call returns. So faint, so stretched by altitude and wind, you almost doubt it. But it's real. The frogs on the plateau inflate their throats. Together. And they answer. This isn't just communication. This is coordination. Historians still debate whether prehistoric frogs had migratory patterns linked not to food or climate, but to sound. Echo-based movement, using vocal frequencies like birds use magnetic fields. The idea is fringe. But standing here under a night sky shimmering with leaping amphibians, you begin to believe it. Because the stars are gone. Not literally, just hidden by them. The sky is thick now with silhouettes. A blanket of bodies. A slow-moving current of frogs ascending from all directions. They ride the warm air using bursts of rain and pressure shifts to glide longer and higher. Some land. Some depart again. Some spiral upward endlessly as if chasing something you'll never see. One bumps gently against your head. You flinch. It lingers on your shoulder a moment. Then, without any interest in staying it, leaps again about gone. You watch until your neck hurts. There are no predators here. No fear. Only movement. They don't flee. They rise. And as you lie back against a mossy stone, letting your eyes lose focus, you realize something. They're not going somewhere. They're becoming something. A cloud of memory. A living constellation. And the stars for one perfect moment belong to them. By morning, if you can call this gray wash of sky morning, you begin to descend again. The frogs are quieter now. Not gone, just settled. Like a crowd after a concert dispersing in soft squelches and the occasional final croak as if to say, same time next year. You follow the ridgeline tracing the slow spiral paths carved by centuries of webbed feet. The air is cooler up here, touched by altitude and maybe just maybe memory. The mammals on your shoulder yawns dramatically, then tucks its nose under its tail again. It has no interest in this part, because what lies ahead is the land that vanished. The earth slopes downward again, and what opens in front of you isn't swamp or forest, it's nothing. A shelf of rock-scarred, fractured raw drops away into a void of blue haze. There's no canyon, no valley, just an absence. This is where the continent ended, where Uvadra sank. You sit at the edge, legs dangling over an impossible silence, and try to imagine what came before. All that life, all those frogs, all that sound. Now buried beneath miles of ocean, pressed into mud, diluted into sediment. And yet something remains, because down there carved into the wall of the drop-off, half buried under vines and soot-colored lichen, is a symbol. Not words, not letters, a shape. 2 overlapping circles. One larger, one smaller. Inside, both a triangle, simple, worn, etched deeply. No one knows what it means. Theories range from tribal sun signs to ancient clan markers to the fanciful, some even say it was a map. The last known fossil of the symbol was found on a slab of basalt, now housed in a museum no one visits anymore. And here you are staring at the original. It's massive, 10 feet across. You could lie down in it and still have room for a picnic. You reach out. The stone is warm, not from sunlight, from memory. Some historians claim Uvadra never truly disappeared, that tectonic movement simply hid it. Others say the land sank during a cascade of prehistoric floods triggered by glacial shifts. Still others, the fringe ones, whisper that it was never a continent at all, but a living creature, an island that croaked itself into oblivion. You snort, then pause. Because from far below, so far, you're not sure you didn't imagine it, you hear a sound. Croak. Low, faint, echoed through miles of space. You lean over cautiously. Nothing, just mist. But the sound lingers. Not menacing, not confused, just present. Odd fact to file under. I wish I didn't know frogs can survive freezing. Like actual freezing. They thaw out and hop away. There's even a theory that some species can slow their metabolism to such a crawl they hibernate through centuries. In theory, a frog could outlive empires, if it had the patience. So what if some of them didn't go down with the land? What if they waited? You remember the echo chambers, the stone with grooves for sound, the frogs that responded to frequencies, not seasons. What if this place isn't lost? What if it's asleep? The mammal at your side stirs, looks down, then squeaks. And from somewhere just below the ledge, a glow, a faint shimmer in the mist, not lightning, not reflection. It pulses just once and fades. You say nothing, because what could you say? Some things don't need explanation. They just continue. You mark the symbol in your notebook. Sketch it, trace it. Not that anyone will believe you, but someday someone else might sit here, might hear that croak, might see that glow. And maybe then the land will remember them too. One more off-topic gem to end your spiral. There are frogs today that sing underwater. Entire melodies undisturbed by surface tension, heard only by those who know where to listen. Maybe Uvadra is still singing, just deeper. Now, just further down, you stand. Wipe the moss from your hands, turn from the ledge, and walk back into the world of light where frogs are small and people forget. But behind you, the sound continues. Croak. The walk back down isn't so much downhill as downworld. With every step, the air warms slightly, the mists thin, and the terrain slips back into that primeval stew of mud, fungi, and echo. But something's different. Not wrong, just off-axis. Because now the frogs aren't watching you anymore. They're watching each other. You see it first in their spacing. Before, they scattered flowed like a chorus line of wet instinct. But now they're static, positioned. You pass 3 of them crouched in a triangular formation around a small, stagnant pool. None croak, none move. They just sit, waiting for something, a signal you can't hear. And then you stumble across the bones. They're not buried, not hidden. They're placed, arranged along a shelf of rock like a museum exhibit. All frog skeletons, though. Which frogs is anyone's guess. The shapes are uncanny. Some have humps, some have extra long toes. One has no skull at all, just a cavity lined with tiny teeth. You've never seen that in a frog. Historians still debate whether these bone gardens were natural deposits or intentional displays. The fossil record is unclear. No tool marks, no signs of burial, but the order suggests something more. The one in the middle stops you cold. It's coiled. Spine curled in a perfect spiral, legs tucked tight, jaw agape. Its vertebrae are fused like it died mid-turn and never relaxed. You kneel beside it. The mud around the skeleton is darker, softer. You brush it back gently. Another skull emerges. Then another. It's a stack. No an arrangement. A spiral of frog remains descending downward like a spiral staircase of extinction. One of the frogs from the triangle approaches behind you. You don't hear it. You feel it. It doesn't croak. Just sits beside you and stares at the spiral. You whisper, "Did you do this?" Of course it doesn't answer, but it doesn't leave either. You trace a finger along the spiral's edge. The bones are cool, clean, polished in places by rain or perhaps touch. Here's your odd anatomical fact for the moment. Frogs have a unique feature in their vertebrae called the urostyle. A rod-like bone formed from fused tail vertebrae that helps them jump. But a few fossilized specimens from Uvadra show spiraled urostyles corkscrewed instead of straight. No one knows what that means. Some say it's genetic drift. Others suggest it's an evolutionary response to burrowing or rotational movement. Still others, the less popular sort, think it's a post-mortem ritual. You step back suddenly, unsure if you've just interrupted a grave or a message, because the spiral ends in a stone, just one. Carved again with that same symbol, two circles, one triangle, but this one is broken, cracked clean through, a chunk missing. You kneel again and examine the fracture. It's old, very old, but not natural. The break pattern suggests impact, deliberate, like someone or something didn't want this message finished. That's when you hear it. Not a croak, not a splash, a rumble from below. Not the deep croak of Garganto rana, something thinner, sharper, a dry sound like bones shifting under pressure. You glance at the frog beside you. It doesn't react. You take that personally. Another fact to stuff in your trembling brain: fossil sites on former Gondwanan landmasses have revealed frog bones with unusual articulations, joints that allowed rotational movement in multiple axes. One researcher referred to them as prehistoric socket puppets. They were laughed at, but maybe it wasn't a mistake, because one of the skeletons shifts. You blink. No, not moves, not leaps, just a twitch. The jaw tightens. Another twitch. You stand fast. The frog beside you croaks once, short-clipped. Then everything goes quiet. Every frog in the area, dozens now surrounding the spiral, turns toward the bones and waits. Historians still debate whether these kinds of events were real or just the consequence of shifting sediments, tidal gas pockets, or animal scavenging. But you don't have time for theories, because a second skeleton twitches, then a third. And the spiral begins to shift, not violently, not with horror, just rotation. The bones turn. You back away, feet squelching in the mud. Something is being readied. You retreat to the edge of the shelf, heart punching your ribs, breath fogging in the humid air. The frogs don't follow. They stay, sitting, watching, guarding. You climb a low ridge and turn once more to look down. And in the mist barely visible, the spiral of bones rotates once, then settles. Not a threat, a signal. You don't know what it says, but you know this. The frogs remember. And now so do you. You don't sleep that night. The forest does. The frogs do. Even the mammal in your pocket curls up like a comma and disappears into dream. But you lie beneath a fern the size of a canoe, staring at the fog-filtered moon, blinking only when your eyes demand it. Because after what you saw in the spiral pit, silence doesn't feel peaceful anymore. It feels loaded. You rise at first light, or what passes for it in this soft-lit swamp world, and move carefully, picking a path around roots, still puddles, and logs that might be logs, or something with a pulse. The air is different now, cooler, drier, as if the forest is exhaling. You pause, tilt your head, and realize what's missing. The croaking has stopped. Not softened, not shifted. Stopped. The frogs are still here. You spot one watching from a stump, another half submerged in a puddle like a leftover thought, but they don't sing anymore. You walk a little faster. Eventually, the trees open again into a clearing you don't remember crossing into before. It's circular, hemmed in by low ridges, and in the center is a single stone. Not large, not carved, just alone. You approach. It's warm, bone-colored, not native to the surrounding stone. You touch it and your fingers come away dry. That's the first, truly strange thing you've seen all day. The dryness. Everything else in this place glistens. Mists, moss, mushroom caps your own skin. But this stone is parched, clean, like it's been untouched for centuries. On its surface is a shape. No, not the symbol, not this time. It's a face, frog-like but not quite. The eyes too narrow, the mouth too wide. A stylized representation, possibly ceremonial, possibly a warning. Historians still argue over the monolith faces found on remote outcrops in former Gondwanan zones. Most dismiss them as coincidental erosion patterns. Others quietly speculate they were made by frogs or for them. What nobody agrees on is what they meant. You circle the stone. No inscriptions, no signs of burial, no offerings. Just the face, watching, waiting. You sit before it. Not in reverence, exactly, but out of a growing sense that this is the last stop, the final page in a book that doesn't end so much as fade. Because you felt the shift in the forest, the hush, the stillness. Something has ended. You remember the spiraled bones, the chorus of gliders, the endless song of the marsh, and now nothing. It's as if the frogs know. The climate is changing. Slowly, imperceptibly, but enough. The rains are thinning. The nights are warmer. The fog doesn't cling the way it used to. And for creatures who read humidity like music, who tune their entire lives to pressure and moonlight and soil softness, that's everything. Some scholars suggest that Uvadra's frog empire collapsed not from violence or predators, but from atmospheric betrayal. That their bodies so perfectly calibrated simply couldn't adapt to a world shifting out of tune. Others whisper something darker, that the frogs chose to stop, that their silence was a message, a refusal, a withdrawal. You reach into your pack and pull out the notebook you've been scribbling in since this began. Your fingers hesitate. What do you even write? There's no grand revelation, no monster to vanquish, no artifact to retrieve, just an absence and a memory. One final off-topic wrinkle to keep your brain stirred: in certain high-altitude species of modern frogs, adults have been observed hibernating in groups, pressing against each other beneath moss to retain moisture during droughts. It's not nesting, it's waiting. You begin to wonder, what if they're not extinct? What if they're just resting somewhere below, deeper than any echo can reach? You close the notebook, rise, and without fanfare begin to walk. Behind you, the stone doesn't blink, doesn't hum, doesn't croak. But you know, this land was once a kingdom of amphibians. Not in the way humans think of kings and crowns, but in rhythm and weather and night. And though it's quiet now, it remembers. Your feet hurt, not from injury, from continuity. You've been walking for what feels like centuries across mud roots, stone, and memory. Each step presses into a land that no longer sings, only listens. There are frogs still? Of course. A few, hidden, watching, breathing. But the rain is over. You can feel it. And the question follows you like humidity. What happens to a kingdom when its music stops? The air is heavier now, but not in a storm way. More like finality, like a curtain drawing to close the show. You feel it in the trees, in the soil, in the silence of creatures who used to shout their presence and now let the quiet do the talking. You emerge into a basin, wide, flat, pond-ringed. It should be loud, but the frogs do not sing. They dream. You see them, dozens of them, clustered at the pond's edge. Not moving, not hiding, just sitting, as if waiting for something. A signal. A rain. A rebirth. No one knows. And that's where you sit too, across from them. No fear, just stillness. You mirror them. It's not mimicry, it's communion. Because you realize in that moment what it's all been about. Frogs don't build cities. They don't write myths or name each other or plan legacy monuments. Their memory is atmospheric. Their rituals are seasonal. Their empires are temporary. But they remember. Through song, through echo, through rhythm. They remember the way air changed before the first true drought. They remember the taste of wind before mammals ruled the world. They remember each other not as individuals but as pulses, as harmonies. Even now in their silence they remember. And you somehow have been permitted to sit among them, to witness what they've become. Or maybe what they've always been. There's a strange peace in it, in knowing you're watching the final performance of something that was never yours to begin with. Even the small mammal on your shoulder seems to understand. It's quiet now too, not asleep, just listening. Far away in the fog, a single croak echoes. One. Then silence again. Not because the reply wasn't heard, because it wasn't needed. This isn't sadness. It's memory humming itself into stillness. One more oddity for the end. Some species of frogs, when exposed to environmental stress beyond their ability to adapt, will stop vocalizing completely. For hours, days, sometimes forever. Not out of fear, but because their songs are only meant for certain conditions. When the world can't hear them properly, they wait. Maybe that's what this is. Not extinction, not retreat, but patience. The basin remains quiet. You rise one last time and nod toward the frogs. Not goodbye, just thank you. And as you turn stepping back into the world of creatures with clocks and calendars, you hear something maybe real, maybe imagined. A soft hum, a breath through soil, a whisper of water over stone. And for just a moment, the frogs remember you. In the forgotten folds of prehistoric time, there existed a continent lost to ocean and memory, a land called Uvadra, where frogs ruled the night. You journeyed through its mist-heavy swamps, listening to the echo of monstrous croaks that once shook the earth. These weren't ordinary amphibians, they were ancient architects of rhythm, guardians of tadpole nurseries, performers of sonic rituals. They fought wars not with teeth but with resonance. They courted not with dances but with atmospheric harmonies. They lived in tune with the weather, the moon, the very pulse of the soil. You witnessed their grandeur. The towering Garganto rana that swallowed birds whole. The gliding frogs that filled the sky like a living cloud, and the eerie choirs that lured prey with song. You stepped into caves carved not by water but by echo. You watched bones spiral in memory and symbols etched in stone hint at messages not yet understood. But slowly the rhythm fell silent. The frogs gathered one last time not to sing but to remember. Their voices faded not from weakness but from wisdom. They knew when the song no longer served the land. Now they sleep. Somewhere deep beneath layers of water and time, they hum to each other still. And you heard them. You remember,